so nice to see so many of you here. Thank you so much for coming out on such a full night. We love having you here in this beautiful place, and on behalf of the Historical Society, tonight I am visiting in the house. So welcome, and I'm going to say a few words of thanks to people who have been so wonderful in helping us get this together. First of all, to Leona. Leona, I think, is out with the door of the Tallcorn Hotel. Isn't it beautiful? She also prepared the refreshments, which you can enjoy later. We also want to thank Mark Osmondson of KDAO for the audio equipment. And most of all, Mary. Where are you, Mary? Mary is the author and director, very kind director of our program this evening. Thank you. And the lovely ladies that you will be meeting will be introducing themselves, and I will turn it over to Joanna Raymond.
Hi, I'm Joanna Raymond, and I'm the current historian for 20th Century Club. Before we begin tonight's program, I'd like to recognize the officers of our club who are here tonight and ask them if they would please stand. Joanne Butcher is our president. Jan Kraft, Vice President. Jan, wave your hand. Mary Jefferson, Recording Secretary. Susan Hibbs, Corresponding Secretary. Sylvia Lorenz, back there in the corner, Treasurer. Edith Rankin is our auditor. And our directors are Mary Giese, Shar Smothers, Marion Bryant, and Marion Koenig. Thank you. You can be seated, and I think a lot of you are standing. So. On behalf of, I'd also like to ask if there's any club members here, any of our 20th Century Club members, if you would please stand. On behalf of 20th Century, I'd like to thank each of you in the audience for coming tonight, and the Historical Society of Marshall County for inviting us to present our program. 20th Century Club was founded in Marshalltown in the fall of 1898, which was 116 years ago. It is one of the oldest organizations still in existence in Marshalltown. The organizers wanted a club that was forward-looking, so they decided to name the club 20th Century Club because they were anticipating the beginning of a brand new century, the 1900s, in a little bit more than a year. Our current members' interest in learning more about the club in its earlier years was stimulated in 2011 when Betty Collison, club historian at the time, gave a presentation on 20th century history at one of our meetings. Betty, would you please stand? I know you're here. Thank you, Betty. From the beginning of the organization in 1898, the club had maintained scrapbooks containing newspaper clippings, program booklets, and photographs of the club's activities and its members at the Marshall County Historical Society. The scrapbooks, minutes, and financial records were all stored there, and Betty and I decided that we should review these materials so that our members and the executive board would be knowledgeable about our past decisions. In October 2011, we decided to form a committee of 8 members who would research and compile information about the early members. The committee members included Alice Cassidy, Betty Collison, Mary Jefferson, Phyllis Lane, Shayla Ludley, Joanne Nevin, Joanne Raymond, and Jan Lers. In addition to reviewing the materials at the Historical Society, committee members studied the local history information available at the public library. It turned out to be a very interesting and informative project, as we learned a lot about the people who were involved in creating the organization and who were the movers and shakers in Marshalltown at that time. After our research was completed, we began sharing tidbits of the history at our regular meetings. Since the response to these reports were so positive, we decided to create a booklet with the information we gathered and could be given to all of our members. Mary Giese, who was club president in 2013, helped edit and organize the booklet. She's also written the script and created the PowerPoint presentation that you're about to see. After our presentation, if you're interested in having a copy of our booklet, the cost is $5 each, and you can purchase it back in the back from our club treasurer, Sylvia Lorenz. If you're interested in learning more about 20th Century, you're welcome to leave your name and contact information with her. Now that we've moved into the 21st century, some people have wondered why we have not changed our name and it's still 20th Century Club. Our members have discussed the idea of changing our name, but they decided to keep the name of the club the same to remind them of the vision and forward thinking that was shown by our founders in 1898 when they created an organization that is still vital and relevant some 116 years later, in a century beyond their immediate view. And now we hope you enjoy learning about Marshalltown and its residents in 1898. In 1898, the United States was full of optimism and ingenuity. That year, the first amusement pier opened in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and the roller coaster was patented.
The first automobile was sold, and the post office authorized the use of postcards for 1 cent each.
Will Keltner invented the cornflakes, and Caleb Graham renamed his carbonated soft drink Pepsi Cola.
Scott Johnson's piano legs was arranged, and the Art Nouveau style was in fashion.
The first envelope folding and gumming machine was patented, as well as celluloid photographic film.
Cheerleading started at the University of Minnesota with Johnny Campbell leading the crowd and cheering on the football team. Scientists Pierre and Marie Curie discovered radium.
Also that year, the United States went to war with Spain when the USS Maine was sunk in Havana Harbor, killing all 266 men aboard. On April 25th, President McKinley asked Congress for a declaration of war, and the battle cry was, "Remember the Maine." The Spanish-American War lasted less than 4 months, concluding on August 12th. After the war ended, the United States acquired the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam.
That same year, the U.S. House of Representatives accepted annexation of Hawaii.
The city of Marshalltown had been established only 45 years earlier, in 1853, by Henry Anson and his family. Anson had given the land to the city to build a courthouse in 1881. Construction began in 1884, and the courthouse was dedicated in 1886. In May of that same year, the 1886 legislature voted to locate the Iowa Soldiers' Home in Marshalltown. When the new century began, the courthouse was 12 years old, and Marshalltown had a population of more than 11,000 people, equaling Cedar Rapids and surpassing Fort Dodge, Mason City, and Waterloo in size.
A well-built power plant capable of producing sufficient electricity to power the recently invented electric streetcars and to provide electricity for private homes was built in 1892.
Dave Lennox, who had started his business as a teenager fixing sewing machines, moved to Marshalltown to find work as a machinist, and ended up owning the Iowa Heating Company when his bosses could no longer pay him for his work. By the turn of the century, Lennox had redesigned and fine-tuned the furnace, and the forerunner business of Lennox Industries was off and running.
William Fisher had moved to Marshalltown in the 1870s to build the city's first waterworks. When a fire burned down one of the city's buildings in 1876, Fisher had to manually hand throttle the steam pumps to maintain water pressure. This experience led to the development of the Fisher valve and the formation of the Fisher controls. By the 1890s, the company was selling their governors to business and industry as well as cities. And soon after the turn of the century, sales reached 44,000 annually.
Marshalltown's founder, Henry Anson, was alive and active in Marshalltown when the 20th Century Club was being founded in 1898. Anson served as mayor in 1891-92 and is shown here with his police force.
Anson's friends, Greenleaf Woodbury, had been successful in getting the first transcontinental railroad tracks routed through Marshalltown. At the turn of the century, 7 passenger trains arrived within 1 busy hour each morning and each evening. The first telegraph line across the continent was also strung through the city about the same time. With access to communication and transportation, Marshalltown was assured of growth.
A new high school was opened in 1894 to replace the high school that burned down in December of 1892. The most impressive feature of this new building was the study hall on the 3rd level. It had 23-foot-high ceilings and tall windows on the south. And it provided oak desks for 240 students. And there were busts of Shakespeare, Irving, Raphael, and Lincoln that added to the academic atmosphere.
Many very talented, educated women had come from eastern cities with their husbands to establish homes in Marshalltown. Some of them had joined together in 1893 to establish Hawthorne Club, a reading club which met weekly. This reading club was not just a fad. It came as the ladies in the western states felt the need to be better informed and better educated. Numerous clubs in the late 19th century were organized for educational and cultural purposes, and Marshalltown became known throughout the state for its women's clubs.
By 1898, these women were living in spacious, beautiful homes, and they enjoyed entertaining. They felt the need for a club in which men and women together could enjoy social meetings and discussion of ideas.
In October, 5 women, Alice Fletcher, Jenny Kirby, Maria Garvin, Alice Simmons, and Anna Howe, met to organize such a club. It would be the first club in Marshalltown in which both men and women were members. The name of the club, 20th Century Club, was suggested by Mrs. C.F. Kate Rogers, who was an honorary member from Iowa City, and points to the time when it began, just as the 20th century was about to begin. Let's meet these women.
My name is Alice Fletcher. I was born in 1858 and raised in Marshalltown. My father was Dr. George Black, and our family was well known in this area. I'm proud to say that I served as the first president of 20th Century Club. My friend Cora Letts and I had established Hawthorne Club earlier in 1879 when I was 21 years old. It was for ladies only. We wanted our new club to be larger and to include husbands. We wanted to bring culture to this area in the form of art and literature study groups. My personal favorite was literature. We decided to start with 25 couples. We also planned evening events for our spouses that included dinner dances and lectures by prominent artists and authors. It worked very well right from the beginning. My husband, Thomas, was a businessman, and he worked at the First National Bank for a number of years. We had 4 children, and sometimes we had relatives staying with us as well. Because of my training as a social worker, I would never turn anyone away. We lived at 202 East Church Street. In addition to 20th Century Club, my friend Anna Howe and I formed the Iowa State Federation of Women's Clubs. I also helped to start the city's first Gulf Country Club, which later was replaced by Elmwood Country Club. Although I was living with my daughter in Los Angeles when I died in 1945, my body was returned to Riverside Cemetery in Marshalltown and buried next to my husband, Thomas.
My name is Jenny Kirby, and I am originally from a village near Albany, New York. After completing my education, I met and married George Kirby in June of 1868. He decided that Marshalltown was his favorite town and wanted me to join him there. I was 23 and he was 32. George was a well-educated civil engineer in charge of building the Chicago and Northwestern Railway from Clinton to Council Bluffs, Iowa, including the bridge which crosses the Mississippi River at Clinton, Iowa. George was a good businessman, too. He and our friend, Henry Howe, started Fidelity Savings Bank, where George was president in 1892. He also formed the LeGrand Quarry Company, which mined rock for buildings and ballast for the railroads. LeGrand Quarry Stone was used to build the Episcopal Church on East Church Street and the new Carnegie Library in Marshalltown. I enjoy being active in clubs and entertaining people in our home at 4 South 5th Avenue, which is now the location of Eye Care Associates. In addition to serving as the first vice president of 20th Century Club, I was also a charter member of the Spinning Wheel chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. George and I didn't have any children, and so when we died, our estates, were left to the Deaconess Hospital, the YWCA, and other groups. According to my obituary in the Times Republican, I was probably the wealthiest woman resident in Marshalltown when I died in 1928.
My name is Maria Garvin, and I came to Marshalltown from Pennsylvania when I married Frank in 1885. I was 24 years old, and we made our home at 307 East 8th Street. Frank was an agent for the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad, and we attended the Episcopal Church in Marshalltown, so we knew the Kirbys. Frank was also treasurer for the Marshalltown Vinegar Works. I served as first recording secretary of 20th Century Club, and later as the president of Marshalltown's Federation of Women's Clubs. Frank and I had 2 daughters, Ella and Edna. Ella taught at the Technical High School when she grew up.
My name is Alice Simmons, and I was the first treasurer of 20th Century Club. My husband John and I came to Marshalltown in 1887, and John opened a book and stationery store at 4 West Main Street. The store occupied 3 floors. The first floor had books and office supplies, and the second floor had wallpaper, picture frames, moldings, The store employed 12 people. Our home was at 9 South 3rd Street.
I'm Anna Howe, and I'm the fifth and final member of the group that first organized 20th Century. My husband Henry and I grew up in Northfield, Vermont, and we were married in 1876. George Kirby hired Henry to be a business manager and accountant in his stone quarry business in Chicago. And then in 1879, we moved to Marshalltown. Jenny Kirby and I became good friends as we found we had much in common, including our Eastern background, our husband's business, our childless marriages, and our interest in women's achievement. Jenny was a bit shy, but not I. I made friends easily and became a charter member of Hawthorne Study Club the first year I was in Marshalltown. There was no library in Marshalltown, so research and study was limited. I started promoting a library, an expensive project. With the backing of the Marshalltown Women's Club, we were able to open a private library in the courthouse in 1892. Members bought shares and paid annual dues. By 1898, the city was able to support the library, so we transferred our collection to rooms above 5 West Main, rented by the City Library Association. In 1902, a $30,000 grant from Andrew Carnegie made a new library building possible. I was a trustee of the library until 1904 and became president of the Iowa Library Commission and vice president of the National League of Library Commissions. I enjoy club work, and in addition to serving as first 2-year term director of 20th Century Club, I was a founder of the Federated Women's Clubs of Iowa, charter member and first regent of the Spinning Hill chapter of DAR, and co-founder of the Historical Society of Marshall County. While I was president of 20th Century Club, I persuaded Carrie Jacobs Bond, singer and composer, to come to Marshalltown for a recital. She credited Marshalltown with giving her confidence to begin her career. Carl Sandburg also presented his poetry in a program for 20th Century Club. Henry and I, and George and Jenny Kirby, built new homes next door to each other on South 5th Avenue at number 4 and number 6. The same contractor built both houses at the same time in 1886 and 1887. We enjoyed having bigger homes so we could entertain more. According to Henry, the Kirby's home was big and pretentious. Ours was very nice, and both wives were happy. When we died, the 4 of us were entombed in the mausoleum by the lake at Riverside Cemetery.
Additional women served as officers during the club's inaugural year.
I'm Mary Getz. I served as corresponding secretary. My husband Hiram was a prominent local surgeon who helped establish St. Thomas Hospital, served as first vice president of the Iowa Medical Association, and was appointed local postmaster by President.
My name is Mary Cottle, and I was the auditor. My husband Cassius was also a physician like Dr. Gans. We lived and worked in a sanitarium we established at 202 North Center Street. We owned the first car in Marshalltown, and my husband, who enjoyed real estate, supervised the building of 28 homes in the area.
I'm Adele Willard, and I was a 1-year director. I'm related to Henry Anson, the founder of Marshalltown. My husband Frank ran a bookstore and the artificial ice plant on South 3rd Avenue. My friend Lizzie Spears was the other 1-year director. Her husband Isaac was manager of the Odeon Theater, a first-class, legitimate theater and opera house with as many as 12 shows in a season. The theater seated 1,200 patrons who came in evening attire, long white kid gloves and wore flowers, and who paid $10 a seat to see the opera when it opened.
Cora Letts was a 2-year director for our group. She was the daughter of U.S. Senator Perkins of Kansas. Her husband Frank was the president of Letts Fletcher Wholesale Grocery. In 1895, Frank was mentioned for the Republican nomination for governor and was treasurer of the Republican State League for several years.
According to the original plan for 20th Century Club, there were to be 2 departments of study classes for the women. These groups would meet in homes in the afternoon. In addition, there would be 4 or 5 evening events in which both men and women would meet, also in homes. The first evening meeting of men and women was a brilliant banquet affair on December 14th of 1898 at the home of George and Jenny Kirby. George spoke at the event on the topic of 19th century rulers.
The 2 study classes were art and literature, and they were the core of the club. The art department sponsored the fine art exhibits held in Marshalltown, often held downtown in rooms over the stores. One was held at Bedford House. The displays were paintings and copies of masterpieces. A small fee was charged, and that money was used to purchase pictures for the schoolrooms. Every effort was made to interest children in art, even sponsoring children's art classes.
The literature department usually met at the home of Anna Howe because she had a large library, or they met at the public library. Its members often studied one author or one subject for an entire year.
At first, local talent, school authorities, and ministers gave the programs at the evening meetings, with dinners served in the homes. Later, professors and presidents of Iowa colleges and universities addressed the members and had dinners served at the Pilgrim Hotel. As the club increased in membership, the new Tallcorn Hotel became a meeting place for evening meetings. Then Elmo Country Club later took its place. As talent for these meetings became more and more expensive, the club began taking advantage of the excellent entertainments offered in the evenings. With the changes in location, the mode of dress also changed from formal to more casual.
The founders and first members of 20th Century Club set a standard of leadership in the community and in the arts and culture that is still with us today. Their vision and commitment have benefited the many members of 20th century over the past 116 years of our organization's existence. And we are challenged to continue their legacy even in the 21st century. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much.
And now I'd like to introduce Leona from the Tallcorn. Who also thank you. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody tonight. Thank you for coming out. What an awesome event with standing room only, huh? Thanks for coming and what a great history. Stand to the side. There's a good place for you to stand. I want to block you. We have a PowerPoint presentation here that Mary's loading. It's going to give some history actually on the Tallcorn in the ballroom, which I learned a lot of. What's happened, I kind of fell into this opportunity here and I'm falling in love with the ballroom, absolutely. The stories that I hear from people are amazing. How many of you in this room, just out of curiosity, have attended an event here back in the heyday? Let's see some hands. Awesome. Great memories, everyone, correct? Yes, I've heard sorority formals, wedding receptions, all kinds of things. So this is kind of actually the last slide that I'm talking about now while this loads up.
Where's Dan?
Dan? Jan to the front, please. We have a technological problem. My goal is to bring the Tallcorn Ballroom, Grand Ballroom, back to the point where it is the place to be in Marshalltown. It is a place of eliteness and sophistication where people come and have an awesome experience. And that's kind of on the last slide, and I'll talk a little bit more about my vision for that. Awesome. The Tallcorn Ballroom. The Tallcorn is a landmark historic hotel originally built in 1928 as the Hotel Tallcorn. It is prominently located on Main Street in the heart of Marshalltown, Iowa. Many of its unique historic facade and lobby features were altered in a poorly conceived modernization attempt during the 1960s, and shortly thereafter, the hotel was converted to 65 very small apartment units. In addition to the usual preservation challenges related to the asbestos and lead remediation, retrofitting mechanical systems, and meeting historic standards, the physical redesign of the Tallcorn property posed unique challenges, including major demolition and reconstruction needed to reverse the drastic 1960s modernization, removing the large unsightly concrete window adornments and rebuilding the first floor storefront doors, windows, and canopy entrances in accordance with their original configuration. Preservation of the Tallcorn's historic features included restoration of the scattered historic bathroom floor tile within the units. Because the floor plans were completely reconfigured, many sections of the tile ended up spread throughout the kitchen and living areas. Since the new flooring had to be designed to incorporate these random tile areas, there were limited options for new flooring. Ultimately, we selected a high-quality, poured concrete product with a marbled epoxy finish that smoothly integrates the intricate marble tile fragments in a way that creates unique historic design features. The most striking feature of the new Tallcorn is the completely restored ballroom. This room holds a special place in the Marshalltown history, as it was the hub of local sophistication and elite dining for over 40 years. Having fallen out of use, the space suffered from water damage, dilapidated windows, and several inappropriate updates like pink painted walls and red shag carpeting. Given that was the most intact historical feature in the building, great care was taken to bring it back to its former glory. The carpet was removed, exposing the original oak herringbone floor. The paint was specially tested in a layer-by-layer method that revealed the original cream and gold color palette. Each window was carefully removed, restored, and put back. The historic chandeliers were removed and cleaned, involving intricate dismantling and reassembly. The final result is a space that looks exactly the way it did on opening day in 1928. Isn't it beautiful, folks? Isn't it? The chandeliers are gorgeous. Ready for the future. I am so excited and so honored and actually very humbled to be able to be a part of the Tallcorn after learning its history. We want to see it used over and over again. There's also a side room that can be used for smaller functions. I want to see wedding receptions, proms, graduations, whatever it is that there's a function. Give me a call. I hope these ladies will agree that I've been easy to work with, and we just want to continue to have this beautiful, beautiful treasure revealed to Marshalltown. So thank you so very, very much for coming out tonight, folks.
That does conclude our program this evening. There are refreshments over here, coffee, water, and treats by Leona and Heavenly Rose. Thank you so much for